is excused.
All right, thank you. Let's get started. May we have approval of the minutes for June 12th of 2024?
I move to approve minutes dated June 12, 2024.
Second?
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Motion carried. May we have approval of the treasurer's report for May of 2024?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, may we have approval of the budget for May of 2024?
I move to approve the treasurer's report dated May 2024.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion carried. All right, let's move on to communications. Infinity Global Incorporated is letter in regard to the Haystack Solar Project northwest of Casper. And we have information up here if anybody's interested in looking at that. And we also have the zoning and planning minutes dated June 18th of 2024, if anyone is interested in that also. Okay, we'll move on to petitions, memorials, and complaints. And we have Everett DeWitt here tonight, and Mr. DeWitt wants to talk a little bit about the museum ramp.
Yeah, has some maintenance issues coming up over there, primarily the ramp. It's getting in poor shape, it's dry rotting out, particularly where it turns and goes around that tree. That tree is pushing the ramp away and lifting it up, it's really off kilter. And then, in front of the door, it bowed up so much you have to jump on the boards to get the door to open. And so I would like to replace the ramp, at least update it. Down here, right when you first start on the ramp, those first several boards are rotted, completely, and they need to be replaced immediately, if not sooner. But I would like to just go ahead and replace the whole ramp. It's been there since, 90, when did you do that?
It was quite a while ago.
98, 99?
Yeah, something
A
like that.
long time ago. And the railing in some places, they're just so dry rotted, you don't dare touch them or you'll get a sliver. So, I thought I would bring that up to you folk.
Right.
Have you looked at all into approximate cost to replace it?
I have not, no.
I know we have funding in the museum.
Uh-huh.
We needed to use, of course, we don't want to use it all.
Uh-huh.
But, I mean, there's definitely an option. Can we look at seeing if somebody can come out and give us, I don't know who we get to do it, but
Right, yeah, me too.
I don't know if you want to reach out and see if anybody wants to give us a bid or if you want us to do it.
It would look more official if it came on a city letterhead or something like that. Or if somebody from the city called, rather than, this is Everett DeWitt from Contango Oil.
Does someone get our public works person to do? Tracy?
No, we could, Jamie, has a lot of things going on right now, getting everything going here, but, we could probably ask him, he's on vacation right now, but we could get something going. And we do have Sally,
What?
we do have Sally.
Sally's our new deputy clerk.
Hi. I could do some looking into that.
Oh, and we wanna welcome Sally on too, she is our, new,
Deputy clerk.
deputy clerk. I knew that. And so welcome Sally on too. And we can find something out here. I can work with these ladies and Jamie and we can get something going here
Okay.
and find out some costs,
Okay.
some bids on this.
That'd
We'll
be
get
super.
some measurements on it and get it to everybody.
Okay,
I walked it this morning and there's some rough spots in it.
yeah. yeah, particularly, handicapped people struggle with it.
Yes.
They have a hard time negotiating around all the humps and bumps and twirls and off kilter and all that kind of stuff. And, Mary Hartman, I don't know if you folk know her, her father was Ed Billy, that helped get the museum going and everything like that. And she came up, what was that, Bert, 2 weeks ago now?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, and brought some stuff up, some really cool stuff to display in there. And he was a good donation, and that's one thing that she talked about was that ramp, getting that ramp fixed and painting the sign on the front of the building again. That's what she would like to see done through a donation.
All right, that's really good.
So would you like to see replaced in kind with wood or explore the possibility of a metal ramp?
I don't know that you wanna do metal. It gets so slick when it's wet or frosty. I prefer wood myself. Even the plastic boards, they really get slick if they get wet.
Composite,
Yeah, the composite. Yeah, I would prefer wood.
All right, okay, we'll look into that and get something going here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and, we have Mr. Chapman here this evening too, to ask some questions about ordinances and parking.
Yeah, probably gonna just bring up something that's already been brought up and have to answer the same questions on the parking, but first with the ordinances. See what we can do to help out. It's been slacking for quite a while. You drive around, you can see where someone just mowed the center of the yard, so the town gets off their back, and an ordinance are a pain in the rear end. I get where no one wants an ordinance. I absolutely understand it. But in them days, when you didn't have ordinance, you had common sense. You didn't need someone to tell you to mow your yard, didn't need someone to tell you to paint your house, you didn't need someone to tell you to fix your fence that's fallen over. And unfortunately, that's where ordinances come from, is the lack of common sense. So here we are. But along this line, you guys are all doing a good job. Don't get me wrong there. This is kind of a fresh start for some of you, but it needs to start looking better around here. Everybody ought to just drive through old Barrow, Wyoming, the pit of Wyoming for quite a while. She's looking better in the Midwest, and it's kind of sad. And we need some help, and there's people that can't afford them. They, and that was one rare place I was gonna bring up the parking, some ideas, but there's people that can't afford to mow, there's people that can't afford to paint their house, there's people that don't want to paint their house or mow. But they need forced to in some kindly manner to help things look good. I don't wanna see an HOA, but I'm starting as I get older to understand them. So along with the ordinances, I just think it's something we need to look into, and there's been a lot of the dog talk, lawlessness. When there's an action, there's an equal reaction. And we don't need equal reactions. They need to be stopped before there is a problem. It's unfortunate right now that it makes it to social media. Everybody's gonna read about it 5,000 times. We're gonna have to have, it's a whole lot more fun to read it than it is to participate in social media for darn sure. It's kind of cool. But it shouldn't make it to that point. Gosh darn it, that we need someone saying, hey, really? Mow your yard, really? The dogs have barked for 48 hours, we're over it, really? And it shouldn't have to come between neighbor and neighbor. I remember an old deal down the street. There was when the old stock car track was going, and the old boys were building the engines, and midnight and 1 in the morning, you could hear them down the street revving. And revving the engines, and everybody was upset about the revving engines, but everybody was too scared. So there's always the neighbor you need to protect that ain't gonna say nothing. He just sits there and like the good kind of people we lost out of gas plant, they just move. And because no one did anything. And we've lost some really good neighbors because no one did anything. And so anyway, the old engine revving stopped when he bought the old freight train air horn or a fog horn off a ship, I forget what it was, and lit her up and blew the windows out of the next door neighbor's house. So that was the equal reaction, and we don't need any of them, so, we need, the town needs help. And you guys are the ones to do it, and it's not, like I say, I'm not here pointing fingers, we all get lazy, we all get relaxed, we all need kicked in the shin once in a while. Bill Sullivan come over one time with a plate of cucumbers and onions and carrots and said, "Here." I said, "Well, thank you very much, Bill." And he said, "Then mow your effing yard." And I said, "Yes, sir." And I mowed my yard, and I mowed my yard from then on. And when I mowed my yard, he come over with another plate of carrots and cucumbers. Well, right now, there's some people that are needing a plate of cucumbers and carrots, because it is, just drive down the alley. And I'll tell you another story with that. The last time my insurance company come out and inspected my house, they said they weren't gonna insure me until I mowed my neighbor's yard. And it was because it was a fire hazard. And I don't know if anybody's been through some of that. And when they were coming to do for hail inspection, and they were gonna do it all. And so, it was all just growed up weed. And he said, "I'm gonna just tell you what, there's a lot of people wouldn't insure that. Just like the fire hydrants. Our good fire department does a good job, and so does the town staying up on the fire hydrants. There's a lot of people don't know what's involved in fire hydrants. If they don't do their job, Ray and the guys down there in the town with the fire hydrants, your insurance can double. It takes people doing what they're supposed to do in town to keep things in action. Is that not right, Ray? That's right. So, back to the parking. I know we've been through this. I know it's public parking. What makes me madder than anything about the parking, someone parking in front of gates. It's every time I go to leave, they're parked in front of a gate. Not only are they parked in front of the gate, they're on the sidewalk in front of the gate. And so, this don't happen very often. And I know that's public parking. We paid the street assessment, but can a person rent it, and give the town money, and then you have control over it, and then that money can go and pertain to public picnic tables, painting a house, donations, what is it? That's just an idea I'm throwing out there for you. I'm not gonna push it, but can we rent our parking areas to keep people off of them? And then you say, okay, we're gonna rent it, snap you a line on your property line, and no one's gonna be in through there, and you can run a letter out in the town, say, hey, anybody wants to rent the parking lot, to keep it now. But if there's a wedding or a social event, you should let the people across the street use it. Just a minute. So that's all I've got, and thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, that was awesome.
It's the most I've heard you say in years.
If you don't mind addressing a little bit with Mark here on what he's talking about. I think we all get what you're saying about the taking care of the yards and the property and stuff like that. Right now, I think we have a town crew of 4 people, I think, that are doing a good job.
Oh, yeah.
There's been some other people that have stepped up and offered their services. Marvin, I think his last name. Anyway, he's running a business, getting a lot of people's knocked out. So I think overall, we're trying to keep it as much as we can. Ordinance wise, I think we're kind of in a little bit of a stagnant right now with losing our police officer.
We were stagnant before that, though.
Right, but I think that moving forward, I think you're gonna see a positive direction that it goes as we find another police officer to pick up those duties as code enforcement and so on. So I think right now it's just being a little bit, have a little bit of patience while we work through the police officer thing.
No,
But I think you will see a positive in the end. I can't promise how fast it will happen, but I think we're heading in the right direction.
I think it needs to, a person needs to just get reminded once in a while that there are people thinking about it. Because there is people out there, if someone needs their yard mowed, they come to me, I'm gonna go mow their yard. I've mowed many of people's yards this year. And there's a lot of people that will do that. But the problem is, there's a lot of people that are have the nice mower, have a nice weed eater, and plenty capable of mowing their yards, and they just pop the center out so they comply with the town, and the town's leaving them go. And so you'll see it, you just drive down the alley over there, just drive down every alley. It'll disgust you what an alley looks like.
Yeah, we do take action
It's
on
a
the
fire
ones that-
hazard.
We are taking action on the ones that don't get
Yeah.
done, notifying and things like that.
Which is good, and you probably are.
Yeah, and you just need the people to, like you said, be responsible. I mean, you've seen me, I run the first 8 houses down the street on the alley on
No,
both
you
sides.
got a beautiful
Just
yard.
get everybody to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
We'll get there. But I think we're heading in the right direction. Just
Oh, I
have a
think
little
so,
patience.
yeah.
All right,
Mr.
thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
we have another,
I've got a question.
yes.
On Mark's, comment about renting the space in front of his yard. Or if you approve it and anybody rents it, buys it, whatever, however you put it. What if, say, the water line underneath that section breaks? Who's gonna be responsible for it?
You'd have to put that in the writing, and it'd still be.
No, I mean, no, I'm not arguing about what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that we
What
would
you're
have to.
saying makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
But you're talking a water line, I understand that we're responsible from the water line from our T-stop back into my yard.
And
So
if-
if I buy that parcel where the parking is,
There'd be a lot of.
yeah, but if they really rent it or buy it,
Sure, there would
who's
still,
gonna be responsible
that,
for it?
just, I mean, that'd be up to them, but that probably wouldn't change any. You'd have to figure that in.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, cause I mean, cause from
The court.
the shut off
The
valve
shut-off valve to the court, yeah.
in the street, in the parking area, from there, I'm responsible for that water line.
Yeah.
And where I grew up, we're not responsible for anything until it hits our meter.
so in that instance,
Yeah, back.
Tim, I think what would happen would be, if that was something the town wanted to pursue, they would look at doing an MOU with that individual or that property owner, kinda like we do with the clinic, where we have an MOU that they have that space, they're responsible for certain aspects that are contained in that space, that would probably fall under that same type of situation.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot more that would be involved, it's not just the water line, you have to look at, all right, now, the town can't suit that area because it belongs to you. You can't,
Yeah.
they can't run these snow removal because it belongs to you, just things off the top of my head, so there's a lot more that would go into it, that we'd have to look at.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking, cause I mean, you got sidewalk in that
Yeah.
section.
And I guess to clarify where I'm at, it's solely renting or buying the parking.
Yeah, and
And
that's why,
that eliminates it.
and that's why I was asking, cause I was like, alright, if I buy it, am I now responsible for the upkeep, for the concrete, for the asphalt, the sidewalk, and the water line that runs through it?
You're at step 320 from number one.
Yeah, yes, but it's
Yes.
better to have an idea of if I do decide to buy if they let you do that, and I do decide to buy mine, and that water line breaks, and I'm the one that's got to foot that bill, that's a lot of money to dig 8 feet down and fix a water line, cause now it's gonna stop whoever else it runs to.
Absolutely.
Be a lot to look into, but.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking, because I mean, his aspect it makes sense. If he can't, if someone's parked in front of his gate and he can't get out and they're nowhere around, he's stuck whatever he was trying to move out of his gate for, could be the whole weekend. So, I mean, yeah, it makes sense.
That's
Just
where
trying to figure out.
That's where the equal reaction comes in. I wouldn't wait that long.
He'll just chain
Yeah.
up and haul
Yeah.
it away and.
Yeah.
keep
You
going.
see-
Well, yeah, and
I-
that's why I'm asking, I mean,
Yeah.
cause
We-
if I rent it or if I get the opportunity to buy
Hard,
it,
I'll do it.
then I can keep people.
I do.
But
It's
I gotta-
okay.
I gotta wait
It
to
happened.
take care
We
of
went
it.
over
Yeah,
this
I
2
know
years
you
ago.
I will wait till after the meeting.
I know,
to tell you.
I know.
How I took care of my part.
We do, yeah.
Yeah.
Back interest.
Yeah, I wouldn't
We
put
went
it
over,
on
but
the
on the zoning report, we went over
Okay,
this.
let's move on now, talk about this long enough, let's move on. We have a zoning permit that the zoning and planning
You
at,
rent your parking and keep it up in the
okay.
sky.
Can we have a motion on this zoning for permit for Bruce Roberson for 562 Peach Street, a fence?
I move to approve the zoning permit for Bruce Roberson at 562 Peak Street for a fence.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, motion carried. Okay, let's move on to officers' reports. Maintenance report, we do have a maintenance report, but Jamie isn't here. We have a lot of stuff going on, and so does he. So, if anybody's interested in looking at it, they can come up and, check that out. There's a lot of things going on here. The clerk's report.
I don't have anything.
All right, thank you. A mayor's report, I just have one thing here. We have we've been working with Edgerton and in regards to a joint police chief within both towns. And we're putting together a special meeting on July 18th, which would be next Thursday evening. And so we'd like to get everybody together, both councils and both mayors together and the town, and see if we can put something together, if we can get in agreements with anything like that. And so we'd probably put it together over at
Rec Center?
the rec center.
Do we have a time for that yet?
No, we haven't, so let's discuss that a little bit. What would be a good time for everybody? 6, 7 o'clock?
I think Edgerton's regular meetings are at 6, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yes, and ours have been at 7, but what would the community feel? 6 o'clock be good for,
Yeah.
you know? So let's put something together like that for around 6 o'clock then.
Okay.
And I'll call over there and let everybody know we're in Edgerton also. It'll be at 6 o'clock on July 18th.
Once we confirm Edgerton's good with that, can we get Sally to maybe put that on social media, just so everybody?
There will be flyers put out.
Okay.
Okay, and that's all I have this evening also. And attorney's report, we don't have one of them tonight either, and no police report. And do we have a council member report this evening? Okay, and we report on them. Let's move on to unfinished business, community improvement. And council member Province has a report for us on the Veterans Memorial.
Okay. So right now, Steve, I can't remember the company he actually works for, but he has been building up the low spots on the memorial, starting to look good. We still gotta do the final, cover and all that, so it's finished, but it's coming along. He gave us a real good price for it, and he's very proactive about it, it's looking great. So I think it shouldn't take much longer when it's done, realizing he's gonna only do the work when it's not too hot, the weather's conducive to using cement and all that stuff. So that's looking really good. I drove by it today. If anybody hasn't, I did notice that our new plaque is on there. It looks beautiful. I got a picture on I didn't bring my phone. But it's looking really good, so I suggest everybody drive by it. With that plaque being on there, we had to remove one plaque. So me and Mr. Dickerson he's been helping me with this project. So when we first started, and Mr. Dickerson set up to get the plaque and everything with that, I told him, per his request, that we would give him this. He has talked to the American Legion, and he's gonna be donating this back to them, because it basically says American Legion on it, so he's gonna be donating it back to them. So I wanted to give it to him so we can kind of close that loop as we get our new one up there. So, thank you, Jim.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And also, just to finish up, I am planning to put together a rededication of that memorial, probably in September. I just gotta work out some logistics for some of the things that I would like to happen at a, 20 to 30 minute dedication at some point. Like I said, in September, I was gonna try to do it during Salt Creek days, but I think it's just too close to, and there's just so much going on that I don't wanna try to squeeze it in. So that's something that I encourage once I get it put together and we get it out to everybody, that I really encourage everybody to show up for that, and encourage all your veterans to be there also. So we'll make a nice dedication out of it, so we can recognize those we've lost and those that we still have around, and those that have done their service.
Yeah,
That's it.
sounds awesome. Thank you so much, Rick. All right, let's move on to horse corrals. We got anything on horse corrals this evening?
No.
All right, and we spoke a little bit about the police chief position. We'll know more by the end of next week on how everything's looking on that. Let's move on. This is the second reading of ordinance 2024-02, an ordinance granting to RT Communications, a corporation, its successors and assigns a non-exclusive right and franchise to construct, maintain, and operate in, on, and under the future streets, alleys, public places, and ways of the town of Midwest, Natrona County, Wyoming. A telephone system for the purpose of supplying telephone services to the town, the inhabitants thereof, and others, subject to the terms and conditions and to the making of payments specified in the ordinance, and repealing any other ordinance in conflict herein. May we have a motion?
Okay, I move to accept the second reading of ordinance 2024-02, an ordinance granting to RT Communications, a corporation, its successors, and assigns a non-exclusive right and franchise to construct, maintain, and operate in, on, and under the future streets, alleys, public places, and ways of the town of Midwest, Natrona County, Wyoming, a telephone system for the purpose of supplying telephone services to the town, the inhabitants thereof, and others, subject to the terms and conditions and to the making of payments specified in the ordinance, and repealing any other ordinance in conflict herewith.
I'll second that.
All right, is there any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Motion is carried. And this is a second reading of ordinance 2024-03. And this ordinance will take an effect after the third reading and final reading, 10 days after the third and final reading. And it's an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 1 in general, Section 2-21, pertaining to the time and date of council meetings. May we have a motion?
I move to accept the second reading of ordinance 2024-03, and ordinance amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 1 in general, Section 2-21, pertaining to the time and date of council meetings.
May we have a second?
Not for me.
I'm gonna be opposed to it too.
We still had to bring the motion forward, so.
What's that?
We still had to bring the motion forward, so without a second, it'll die.
Right, there's no second on this, so this ordinance is no longer in effect. Is that right?
It will go to second reading at next meeting.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to new business. May we have approval for vouchers presented for payment?
I move to accept the vouchers presented for payment.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried, thank you. Okay, and that's all we have for this evening. At this time, we'd like to open up the floor for any public comment, if there's anyone that has any public comment for us this evening. Mr. Sebasto.
Sorry to be late, that speaks indirectly to what was just tabled down. I appreciate the two city council members. Personally, for myself, I'm working in town, and I've already got one meeting, a couple of meetings a week, a month here, with planning and zoning, and a couple of classes at night, so that early meeting would have been not so good. The second thing is, I'm sorry to miss the discussion about dogs. There were some things posted, and one person said something like, you leave the dogs out there until they stop barking. Now, I've heard a lot of idiotic things mentioned, but that certainly gets way up there. People should be responsible for their animals, and if the dog's barking, that's a dog way of saying that they're either cold, hungry, tired, or blah, 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 blah. So anyway, I missed all the discussion, but I'm very lucky right now. I don't have dogs that bark, but I used to have dogs who used to wake me up when I was trying to sleep in on my weekends off, and it was really not pleasant. And the folks who live to the west of me, their dogs are guard dogs, which is their duty. They only bark when you're going by, which is what it's supposed to do. And of course, my neighbor's dog comes out and pees on my tires, but that's not a good dog. So that's, I don't, but the dog does. Okay, no.
And Jean?
Pertaining to the comments made earlier about common sense and logic, it's definitely needed, not just in this town, but in the whole country. I just came from 2 weeks in Europe, Germany to be specific. They are so far advanced of us in the wrong direction, and we are headed that way. I've seen it, I've been there. Law enforcement, ordinance enforcement, fire hydrants. We don't need anything to tell us that we have to stay 15 feet away from a fire hydrant. We don't need anything to tell us that if you have a gate, that you should leave it unblocked for pedestrian use and or vehicle use. It's common sense. What we do need is ordinance enforcement. We don't need a police department. What we need is what they have in Europe on top of a police department. We have a sheriff's department that comes out here and does routine drive around and checks. We have 911 that we call when we need emergencies. Okay? What we need in this town and in Edgerton and in gas plant is an enforcement officer. I have pictures of enforcement officers that are on the street, on duty, in the town where there is no parking allowed because traffic is so limited and parking is non-existent that the only vehicles permitted in town are the vehicles that stop in front of stores for business, people that have an actual reason to block that street in town because of deliveries, repairs, or whatever. We have that situation here. We need to repair something, a truck has to come in, a truck has to park and unload. No big deal, common sense. How long are they there? We have fire hydrants, we don't park there, but we have no enforcement when people do park there. Okay? We need an enforcement officer of some type that will enforce the existing rules and regulations that exist in this town and the surrounding area, including the minor things like chickens, barking dogs, stray cats, etc., etc. Red go-karts that zip up and down the road, four-wheelers that zip up and down the road, on the public road, not in the alleys. We need an enforcement officer, not a police officer. Don't need a lot of training to be an enforcement officer. You need to know the town's regulations and you need to enforce them on the spot. Now, who do we hire for that? We have to discuss that, we have to think about it, and who would do that? Because whoever does that is gonna end up in a world of beans. Because nobody's gonna love him, because he's gonna enforce, or she is gonna enforce the existing regulations that we now have. We don't need nothing new. If somebody parks in front of your gate, you have two recourses. You have an enforcement officer, and you have the police in town, the sheriff. You make a report, he's blocking an egress, they have to enforce their laws because they have laws against blocking egress or entrance. That's basically all I gotta say about it because it's common sense and logic.
Thank you, Mr. Dickerson. Carl?
Yeah. It's nice how we like to stick up for each other around here. Pretty soon it'll be death threats. Threatening people to beat them up because of code enforcement. You know, talk about things going bad in this government. It is pretty damn bad in this government, but it's our own damn fault.
Are you threatening that you're going to be doing death threats?
I'm talking, you don't interrupt me.
Well, I'm asking,
What
bud.
I'm saying,
That's an
that
important
has
point.
happened in this town. No, I'm saying it's happened here. We don't need to be against each other and being nasty to each other and doing things that hurt each other. Yeah, that's common sense. I sure would be pissed off if somebody parked in front of my driveway and I couldn't get to work. I'd be pissed off. Anybody else would be pissed off if someone parked in front of their driveway and they couldn't get out of their garage. It would suck. And there is a certain amount of common sense that goes with that. And I'm not gonna argue that. I'm not gonna argue that some of those ordinances that we have are there to keep each other safe, like fires. It's absolutely true. I'm not gonna argue that. I can't argue that. There's animals and there's stuff like that, but there's other stuff. You know, there's other stuff that we try to enforce that doesn't matter. That's just a hardship on somebody. Because somebody doesn't like the way their house looks and the guy doesn't paint their house. There's no threat there to anybody if you don't paint the house or fix an old fence, as long as the fence ain't hurting somebody, okay? But what we're talking about, what I heard in here, in the little comment that I heard whispered, and I'm not gonna repeat it, because it was snide and horrible, is that we wanna pick on each other. You know, you wanna enforce the ordinances, you know, every single one, every to the letter of the T. Well, that's an attack on people that don't have a lot of money for certain things. Now, I'm not saying that the people that have broken rules can't afford to fix something, do something, but, you know, you're gonna wind up like Casper, where if you don't have your house looking perfect and exactly like what everybody else thinks your house should look like, where does that put us at? Europe, Russia, Pakistan. I don't wanna live there. I live in a small town because I thought the people were cool. And I found out there's a lot of cool people, and I found out there's a lot of nasty people too. I mean, it's bad enough, we got an ordinance where they charge us for not using their service. We have to pay to not use a service. There's no other entity out there except for municipalities that can do that. And I know there's people in this room that know how messed up that is. But yet, it still exists here. And we're worried about how somebody paints their house. You know, there's an ordinance for cutting your grass to keep the fires down. It's there for the safety of other people. Anything else, somebody having a nice yard, that's great. You go the extra mile, you make it look extra great, you make it look extra better. Good for you. But don't shame the guy that does what he can with what he has, and then you expect him to be as perfect as you. That's the epitome of communism. I'm not gonna be like everybody else. Everybody doesn't have to be like everybody else. And HOAs, I still see them as communist. And I know there's rules, and I know that there's people that like to live in those communities, but I didn't choose that, and I don't wanna be part of that. And I don't want the snideness and the nastiness of people parking crappily. So yeah, something needs to be done. But you watch out for the individual's rights instead of just pure democracy, where we bully somebody into it because the democracy says that we're gonna take your stuff. You remember that those individuals, there are certain individuals, they have individual rights to their property. And you have rules to protect the group, but there are rules to protect the individual. And as long as this council protects the rights of the individuals while protecting the rights and the safety of the people in the town, I got no problem with that. But let's not be nasty and snide to each other. We got other reasons. I'm not looking at it huge in general. But I've heard there have been some nasty things in this town going on. And it's in the past, and I'm done. I'm done. Thank you.
Right, Carl, thank you. Is there any other public comment this evening?
I apologize for speaking while you're speaking. It was just you were talking about death threats. and I find that unacceptable. But your other comments are well spoken, and,
No, there was no threats here, I'm just mentioning the threats that were made in the past.
death threats, that sounds crazy.
It does sound crazy, it's absolutely insane. But I'm not gonna get into it.
All right, thank you. Is there any other public comment? All right, may I have an adjournment?
I move to adjourn the regular council meeting.
I'll second it.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, motion is carried. Thank you so much. This meeting is over.